Hey everyone, this is Miss Gillum. Welcome to the decimals review tutorial. I'm going to go through each problem in the review and hopefully answer any questions that you are struggling with. If you just need to check your answers, feel free to quickly go through it and stop and watch the video on problems that you missed. Okay, on the first section, we are converting each fraction to a decimal and then each decimal to a fraction. But first we're going to start with the ones that are fractions. So you have 3/5. And I'm going to work these out the way I see most students working them out. There are more than one way to do these problems. But if you think of you have 3/5, the numerator goes on the inside, which remember we talked about a way to remember is the ice cream. And the 5 is on the out. So 5 cannot go into 3, so we put a 0 on the top and add a decimal and add a 0. 5 goes into 30. 6 times, subtract, you get 0, but bring that decimal straight up. So my answer would be 0 and 6/10. Or you could also think about doing 3/5 to a 10th. That would be times 2, which this is as well, times 2. So it is 6/10, which would be 0.6 or 6/10. Okay, next. We have 11/20. So you take the 5 is a whole number. So we write the 5 first with a decimal point. Because the 5 is whole, we don't need to change it into an actual fraction or a decimal. So 11/20, same thing. The 11 goes on the inside. The 20 is on the out. 20 cannot go into 1, it can't go into 11, add a decimal, put a 0. 20 goes into 110 5 times, that will be 100. You have 10 left over, add another 0 because you cannot have a remainder. 20 goes into 100 5 times, subtract 100, you have nothing left over. So this would be 5 and 55 hundredths. And also, remember, you can write it as an equivalent ratio out of 10, 100, 1,000. So this can go to 100. So times 5 is 55 hundredths. And that's where the 55 comes from. Okay, we're on to question 3 of changing the fraction to a decimal. So you have 7/8. And 8 doesn't go into 10 equally or 100 equally, so this time you have to divide. So the numerator goes on the inside, that is the 7. The denominator goes on the out. 8 cannot go into 7, add a 0. Put a decimal and add a 0. 8 will go into 70. Let's see. 8 times, which is 64. You are left over with 6, add another 0, bring it down. 8 will go into 60 7 times, which is 56. You have 4 left over, add a 0, bring it down. 8 will go into 40 5 times. So this answer will be 0.875 thousandths. Now we are looking at changing the decimals to fractions. Before we can do that, let's rewind and remember our place values. So let's start where the decimal is. So we'll say the decimal is here. So our ones place is going to be to the left of the decimal. And then you have your tens and hundreds. Now if you're going to the right of the decimal, they have very similar names. This is our tenths, and this is our hundredths. And notice it's the exact same thing on both sides except for one has the TH at the end. And then if you need to, this is the thousandths place. So you have to know your place value for this problem. You will not be given a chart. So if I look at this, 1, 2, 2 places after the decimal, 1, 2 is the hundredths place. So I say this is 15 out of 100. Okay, and then we have 9.3, and I'm saying it wrong on purpose. So 9 is our whole number, so we can write a 9 as the whole. This is one number after the decimal to the right, so it is the tenths. So it's 3/10, 9 3/10. Last, we have 7 800ths. So we have 1, 2. So you would say I have 7 800ths because it's in the 2 places past. Remember, sometimes you will need to simplify. This can be divided by 5, and this can be divided by 5. So this would be 3/20 would be the simplest form. This one can be divided by 4, and this can be divided by 4. So I have 7 2/25 would be the simplest form for this one. Okay, part B. Ordering decimals. Write the decimals in order from least to greatest. That's very important that we look at what it asks us to do. So the first one on number 5, and I just noticed this, they have these numbered wrong. This should be a 6. Okay, number 5 also has fractions. So what you can do is change those fractions to decimals. That's why the first part of your review is changing fractions to decimal. So you can do 4/10 to a decimal first. 4/10. 10 can't go into 4. Add a 0 with your decimal. It'll go into 40 4 times. So this is really 0.4 with 0 left over. And then we have 1 1/2, which most of you know a half is just 1 5/10 or 1.5. So now let's put them in order from least to greatest. What I suggest doing is looking at the whole numbers first. So I'm looking for the smallest, if there's any without a whole number. This one does not have a whole number, and neither does this one. So you have 0.4 compared to 0.39. And some of you will think, oh, 39 is bigger, but you have to have the same amount of place value. So now if you look at that, you're like, oh, 40 is bigger. So this one is actually bigger than this one. So our first number is going to be the 0 39/100ths. And then it's going to be the 4/10, or you can write it as 0.4. Now we look at the other place values. Now we're looking at the ones. So now we're going to look at 1.7, 1.1 1500ths, and the 1 1/2. So once again, put those place values holders in there, those zeros. That tells you that this one would come next. That's 1 1500ths, and then 1 5/10, or 1 1/2, and then you would have 1 7/10. And you only have one number in the 2, so our last number would be 2 6500ths. Okay, now let's take a look at question number 2. So I'm going to zoom in. We have these numbers, and once again, I would line them up. So I'm just going to write them in a line right now, and by that I mean line up your decimal, because this will help you if you take the few seconds it's going to take me to actually write these out. It will save you on your test. Okay, the first thing I expect you to do is go in and put any placeholders. Okay, so I see that this one has 3, so I'm going to make sure all of them have 3. They all have the same amount of place value. Now I'm going to look for the first, you're going to look at the tens place. So looking at the tens, the smallest numbers I see are these zeros. So then I go to the hundredths place. They're both still 6. And then I go to this one. And I notice this number is a 0 and this is 2. So this is my smallest. So the first answer should be 0.06 and then 0.062. So we have taken care of those now. Then once again, go back, look at your tens place. I have only 1 1, so this one has to go next because it's the smallest number. So you have the 0 and 1600ths. So now we can mark this one out. Once again, look. Oh, we have 2 7s. Which one is greater? This one is greater, so this one has to come next. which was the 0.7 that we had to change. And then it has to be the 0.75. And then lastly, which I'm running out of room, so I'm sorry, the last, or the biggest number is the 9800th. So line them up, put in your zeros like these that I had to put in, and then compare them. Okay, turn the page to part C. We are now going to look at multiplying decimals. We're going to start with number 1 right here. So remember, when we talked about multiplying decimals, you do not need to line up your decimal. You multiply the numbers as if they were whole numbers first. So 34 times 62. You have 10. 5 times 2 is 10. So remember, you have to do here and there. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Placeholder. 6 times 5 is 30. Carry your 3. 6 times 3 is 18. Plus the 3 is 21. 0, 7, 1, 2, and then we have to go and count how many numbers are behind the decimal. I have 1 here and 1 here. That makes 2 numbers, so we need 2 numbers in our answer. Remember, you can also estimate your answer. So we can estimate 3.5 to be close to 4, and 6 2/10 to be close to 6, and 4 times 6 is 24. So this would be the only place you can put your decimal that makes sense. Okay, next we are going to do problem number 2. So I'm going to zoom in to problem 2. Same scenario in this problem, you're still just multiplying. So we're going to act like these are whole numbers first. And like I said, if you did really great with the graph paper, please get it out. It will help you. So 5 times 9 is 45, carry your 4. 9 times 2 is 18, plus the 4 is 22. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 2 is 11. Placeholder. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. Add. 5 plus 0, 5. 2 plus 5, 7. 1 plus 2, 3. 1 plus 1 is 2. Then once again, count, circle them. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 numbers behind the decimal, so there should be 4 numbers behind the decimal in my answer. Okay, moving on to question number 3 on multiplying decimals. So let's zoom in on this one. Same thing once again, you have 162 times 904. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 6 is 24, carry the 2. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. Placeholder, and then you have zeros, so you can just put the zeros in. Then when you go to the 9, you need 2 placeholders. 1 for the 4, 1 for the 0, and now you can multiply 9. 9 times 2 is 18, carry a 1. 9 times 6 is 54, plus 1 is 55, carry a 5. 9 times 5 is 9 times 1 is 9, plus 5 is 14. So we're going to add 8, 4, 6 plus 8 is 14, 6, and then 14. Once again, circle. 1, 2, 3. There are 3 numbers behind the decimal, so there should be 3 in my answer. And once again, you can estimate. This would round to 16. This number would round to 9. And then if you did 16 times 9, you would see it gets you 144. Wow, look how close these are together. So that really will help you to make sure your answer makes sense, is estimate that your answer is close to your estimation. Okay, we are moving on to dividing decimals. Okay, so we're going to start by looking at number 1. So remember, the first thing with dividing decimals is we actually do not want to divide by a decimal. We want to be able to divide by a whole number. So I look at the number dividing, the divisor. How many times would I need to move the decimal to make it a whole number? I move it once, which is the same thing as multiplying this by 10. And what you do to one thing, you do to the other. So I'm moving this over 1, because same thing as multiplying it by 10. So then I recommend you rewrite your problem. 194 divided by 6. Then the first one in line, so think about this is the line leader, they go in the line inside first because they're first, so they're going to follow and go inside. So they're going to go 194 and your 6 goes on the outside. 6 cannot go into 1, so add a 0. 6 goes into 19 3 times, which is 18 minus 1, or 19 minus 18 is 1. Bring down your 4. Then 6 will go into 14 2 times, which gives me 12. 2 left over. Now you're going to have to add a decimal because you have numbers still going. So add a decimal, bring that decimal straight up every time. Let me make that. Bring the decimal straight up. Okay, bring down your 0. 6 will go into 20 3 times, which will make 18. And you get a 2 again. If you add another 0, oh, it keeps happening. So what's going to happen is this number is going to repeat, and you can just draw a line over it. So your answer would be 32 and 33/100ths repeating, because it keeps dividing over and over and over again. Or you can write this as 32.33 and put the little dots to tell me it continues. Now let's take a look at number 2. Once again, we're looking at the divisor to tell us how many times to move the decimal. So for this one, I would just need to move it once. So for this one, I'm going to move it once. So this is going to be 161 divided by 2. So 161 goes on the inside, 2 on the out. 2 goes into 1 0 times. 2 goes into 16 8 exactly. So I have 0 left over, but you still have to bring down this 1. 2 goes into 1 0. So now we're going to have to add a decimal and add a 0. 2 will go into 10 5 times. Exactly. And now I can stop because I have nothing left over. So my answer for this would be 80 5/10. So you keep going, keep adding zeros until it either repeats or terminates. Okay, last problem is number 3. This one had a big number, but we can do it. So the first thing we have to do, once again, look at this divisor. How many times would you need to move the decimal? 1, 2. So same thing on this side. 1, 2. You don't need to do it more than is necessary. So this would now be 153.6, and you are dividing that by 48. So 48 is really close to 50, so you can count by 50s to determine how many times. So if you think of 48 as 50, 50 and 50 makes 100, plus another 50 would make 150. So let's see if 48 times 3 is close enough. 8 times 3 is 24. 3 times 4 is 12, plus that 2. That is really close to the 153. So it won't go into 1, it won't go in there, so it'll go in there 3 times. We're going to subtract 144. Okay, we're going to have to borrow. Make this a 4. This will become 13. It goes in there 9 times. 4 minus 4 is 0. 1 minus 1. So it went in there exact. So now I have 96. So let's try 48 times 2. Is 6, carry your 1, or 16, carry the 1. Sorry, my dogs are running around the house. So the noise you're hearing are my dogs going inside and outside. So 2 times 8 is 16, carry your 1. 4 times 2 is 8, plus that 1 is 9. So 2 actually will go in there. And that'll give me 96. But I forgot something. You have to move this decimal up. So the answer would be 3.2. Okay, now we are looking at the word problems on the last page. This one says Kira and Eli are close friends that attend Renner Middle School. Kiara's home is 4 8/10 miles away from school. Eli's home is 3.5 times as far as Kiara's. Find the distance between Eli's school and his home. Well, this number right here tells you what you need to do. It's 3.5 times as far as Kiara's, which Kiara's was 4 8/10. So in your mind, you should be thinking this is 4 8/10 times 3.5. But we can't multiply decimals and fractions. We have to make them the same. So either we make them both fractions or we make them both decimals. I recommend we make them both decimals because we know what the decimal is for half. It is 0.5. So I'm going to rewrite this as 4 8/10 times 3 5/10. And now we can multiply the way we've been multiplying decimals. 5 times 8 is 40. 5 times 4 is 20, plus that 4 is 24. Placeholder, 3 times 8 is 24, carry your 2. 3 times 4 is 12, plus the 2 is 14. 0, 8, 6, 1. Then, once again, you've got to go back and look. 1, 2 decimal places. So there should be 2 decimal places in my answer. So Eli's house is 16 80 miles away from the school. Okay, so when you're reading the problems, look for those things that tell you what you need to be doing. The 3.5 times, that tells you times means we should be multiplying. Okay, Kate splits a rope that was 49 4 inches into 4 equal parts. What is the length of each part? So actually, in your mind, think of a rope. She has this rope. She is splitting it into 4 equal parts. So if I'm splitting something, we should think, oh, that's dividing. And then you have to think, okay, which one needs to go inside the dividing box? The 49 4/10, because that is the length of the rope, and the rope is what you are dividing. So the 4 is what you are dividing by. So then we do 4 into 4 one time. And 4 into 9 twice. And then 4 will go into 14 3 times. But you still have left over, so drop down a 0. Bring it all the way down. Well, 4 will go into 20 5 times exactly. And then we have to remember to bring this decimal up. So the answer would be 12 35 inches. 3/500 inches, sorry. Question number 3, Miss Elliott bought 1 8 pounds of ground beef. If the price of ground beef is 4 10 cents per pound, how much did Miss Elliott pay total? So, remember we talked about this is per pound, $4.10 per pound. So that's for 1 pound. But we have more than 1 pound. We have 1 8/10 pound. So this is telling me I need to multiply them because we need to figure out what the amount would be for 1 8/10. So we would do 4 10 cents times 1 8/10. And notice I didn't line up my decimals because you don't need to. 8 times 0 is 0, 8 times 1 is 8, 4 times 8 is 32. Don't forget that placeholder. 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 4 is 4. And then we just add 0, 8, 3, 7. Then go back and circle your decimal places. You have 1, 2, 3. So we should have 3 in our answer. So the answer would be $7.38. Last question for the review. So Miss Regal purchased 12 gallons of gas for $28.56. They want to know how much each gallon cost. So if you think about this, you have like these 12 gallons. I'm not going to draw them all out, but you can imagine. They're breaking them up into each gallon because she has only 12. So they're breaking the money up between the 12. So you have to think, I would give, here, let's put green. This one gets money, this one gets money, this one gets money, this one gets money, this one gets money. But you are dividing the money from the $28.56. So this is a division problem. So we're going to divide the $28.56 by 12. 12 will go into 28 twice, gives me 24. Bring a 4 down. 28 minus 24 is 4. Bring your 5, bring your decimal up. 45, or 12 will go into 45 3 times, which is 36. You're going to have to borrow, make this 3, 15, goes in there 9, drop the 6. 12 will go into 96 8 times. Exactly. So the cost for each gallon would be $2.38. Great job, everyone, finishing your review. I hope the video helped. If you still have questions, come prepared to class to ask them. You still have Thursday to study for the test. The test is on Friday, but I know you will do great. If you are Miss Powers' class, good luck. Take your time. Double check your math always. And come see us in tutorials for a quick session reviewing everything on Friday morning.